Mortal Kombat is a movie that definitely exists. Alright, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's not inherently great either. We all know by now the track record of video game movies not being too great. The only one that was kind of decent was the Sonic movie that came out in 2019. But everything else that's been released concerning a video game movie has just not been great. I mean, look at this. Do you really expect some kind of quality when this was the standard before? I'll give the movie props. At least it isn't as boring as the Assassin's Creed movie. A lot of people are divided on this movie, and it's kind of clear to see why. Some people are calling it good, others bad. Some people who play the games in the movie are saying that they took bits out of the lore, which, I mean, how could you really put too much lore into this movie when all this movie is a trailer for 3 other sequels that they're probably planning, even though they don't know how well this one is gonna do. Hollywood, I'm speaking to you directly. Make movies before you make franchises. We gotta stop this trend of planning out a universe before we even know what's gonna happen in the first movie. It's just messy. It's completely messy, and this movie is a clear example of that. Before I discuss my problems with the movie and before I go bashing into it, which is probably gonna get people mad, I'm going to talk about the things I actually liked about the movie. The good things first, anyway. Number 1, the opening scene. The first 10 minutes, hell, even the first act of the movie is actually quite decent. It kind of got me in the mood for what this movie was going to be. This dumb kind of movie where you can switch your brain off for an hour and a half, but in an enjoyable way. The first 10 minutes basically gives the backstory to Sub-Zero and Scorpion, and it establishes that it's going to supply the fans of the games plenty of gore and violence, which I didn't have a problem with. I thought some of the gore was actually pretty creative, especially in this first scene as well. I don't know how much of it I'll be able to show because YouTube guidelines, so I'm probably going to have to blur a lot of it, but it's enjoyable for that aspect anyway. This opening scene is pretty much Sub-Zero going to Scorpion's. I like it. This is before their names get introduced, but I actually can't remember what their actual names were supposed to be. Sub-Zero's was Bihan. What was Scorpion's? Hanzo. Okay, so Sub-Zero goes and he kills Scorpion's family. Scorpion then goes to take his revenge in a fight scene that lasts a while, but it's actually pretty entertaining. The only problem is that it is shot and edited poorly. Very awfully. It doesn't really give you time to breathe when you're watching it. Good examples of action and fight scenes in movies. If you liked a lot of the action in this movie, that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that. But I will give you movies to watch that edit it much better so you can actually watch the scenes. Those ones are The Raid, John Wick, any of those kind of movies edit it so much better than this movie did. It's just cut after cut after cut, and it's so annoying. Other than that, though, I thought it was a really good opening scene. It really establishes what the whole movie is going to be. Number 2. Oh, wait. Yeah, that was literally the only thing I liked about this movie. Let's rip into it now. Number 1, the plot, if any. I know people aren't watching this movie for an in-depth plot. They're coming for the gore and see how faithful it is to the games concerning the gore. But you could have had something rather than absolutely nothing. When they do have something, it's completely generic and the kind of thing that you would expect in this kind of movie. Character has a MacGuffin that concerns the plot, who meets with people who know about the history of the MacGuffin. Then they go on their adventure and find more people who know about it and tell them about the things, and they teach them the ways. In this case, they teach the main character the fighting styles and all the things that you can probably do in the next Mortal Kombat game that's going to come out. I say this because they introduced a new character they just completely made up for this movie, and you know that he's going to be in some installments of the game. Who would pick this character? I don't know, because he's basically the equivalent of a block of wood. You could take him out of the story, you could replace him with any other character from the game, because my god knows that these people have a lot to choose from when it comes to characters. But you could take him out, and it would change absolutely nothing about the movie. The reason being, he doesn't even really do much. The guy who plays him isn't awful, but his character is just really given nothing to do other than learn the fights, and really he's just a catalyst to protect his family who like get in danger once to move some bit of the plot forward. Other than that, he really does nothing. I don't get how they had such a strong opening in the first 10 minutes and then they completely just abandoned that afterwards. Here's what you could have done, right? Have Scorpion had this revenge plot story, alright? His family was killed at the start of the movie by Sub-Zero. Have him, you know, go to hell or whatever, because apparently he goes to hell when he dies for some reason. It's not really explained, which happens a lot in this movie, I'll get to later. But have him go on this, like, revenge journey, have all the characters that appear in the movie, like, that's fine, but give the character a motive. You didn't need this new guy because he doesn't really do anything with what he's given. Like, he has the mark of the Mortal Kombat on his chest or whatever, which gives him his powers or some shit. There's a moment in this movie where Sub-Zero goes to Cole Young's family to like threaten them, and then a few minutes later he comes out of this like portal thing, and I really thought, they don't do this, but I actually thought because of the R rating of the movie he was going to come out with one of their heads, which was going to give Cole Young some motivation to move the story forward. But no, he just goes back to them and fights a 4-armed CGI monster. But I'm looking at the scene, and given the context, that would be a much better plot device. It would be intense. It would give stakes to the story. But this movie has nothing. Number 2, fan service genocide. Listen, there is nothing wrong by having fan service in a movie with these kind of movies. But when you're using a lot of the characters for canon fodder, I'm pretty sure a lot of people who play the games are going to be pretty pissed at you. Especially when you try and cram so many characters in a movie like this that is an hour and a half long, where some of them are just there to die. There's characters in this movie, you're going to see them for a minute, and they're going to die the next. It's like fucking Game of Thrones on steroids. I didn't have a problem with all these characters really dying because I didn't have too much of a connection towards them, but I'm saying you could have had so many of these characters in some of the movies that apparently you're planning a sequel or two. Who knows? It's probably going to be a trilogy at this point. It almost feels like an ensemble movie when it's also a prequel, actually. Yeah, this is a prequel to a lot of characters' origin story. We got Sub-Zero's origin story, Scorpion's, Jax's origin story is in this, and yet there's so many characters in it, it feels like this has been 10 years in the making, waiting for something as extravagant as this, having all these characters in one movie. I can't even remember half their names. It's so claustrophobic. And they have to introduce themselves in the most basic way, like one to get like the new audience to know who they are. So everyone introduces themselves as like, I am this, or my name is blank. You know, it's one of those kind of things. It gets very repetitive very fast.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3.
Now, was I rushing or was I dragging?
Number 3, rushing. I don't think I've ever seen a movie where nothing happens and yet so much happens at the same time. So many characters getting introduced, characters getting powers without real explanation for it. There's a scene where Sonya Blade kills Kano, and in the next scene, she has powers, or they're like these laser powers that cover her wrists. I know they explain that characters have their own unique powers when they get the marking or whatever, but in what way does that relate to her of killing Kano, and how does she discover them? It establishes that you need to discover something in yourself to get these powers. There was never a scene of that. It brushes past these kind of things so quickly. There's so many plot holes in the movie that they never discuss or they completely ignore. It's really distracting sometimes. Speaking of Kano, a lot of people are saying that he's like the saving grace of this movie. They really like him. I kind of thought he came off as a bit annoying sometimes. A lot of the pop culture references that spewed out of his mouth every 5 seconds got really annoying, and they weren't really that good. I feel like I laughed once during one of the things he said, and he said so many things that I can't even remember what that thing was. Sure, he's fine and apparently a good adaptation of the character, but when you have this character just doing nothing but one-liners every 2 seconds, it gets really annoying. That's the main thing with this movie. A lot of it just really annoys me. And by the time you think, oh, maybe it's starting to get good, it fucking ends. It just ends. They have this like league of villains, which could have done for like 2 villains of the next movies, but no, they're all in this one, and they all die. None of them survive. I do like one of the villains' deaths. It was a pretty fateful fatality from one of the games, so that was pretty good. When I first watched it, a lot of the one-liners that they say from the game kind of took me out of it, but then I realized, well, if you're making this kind of movie, I guess it kind of gets a pass. Like, it's fine. They're very shoehorned in, but, you know, they get a pass. Anyway, this movie could have been a lot better. I only really liked 2 scenes in it. The first scene and some part of the, like, second Scorpion and Sub-Zero fight. Isn't that ironic? The only, like, good scenes of this movie was Scorpion and Sub-Zero. Maybe you should have just made the whole movie around these 2 characters, because they really had this kind of conflict between them that would have been really interesting to explore. But no, I guess not. There could have been more of a story rather than just constant fight scenes, even though some of them were entertaining, I'll admit they were. I just thought you could have fleshed it out a bit more, and maybe it would have been a little bit more enjoyable. I don't really score my reviews, because it's kind of hard to debate that sometimes, but a lot of people like when you do, so I guess out of like 5 stars, I'd probably give it like 2.5, honestly. I didn't really see the appeal of it as many people are liking, but at least I'm not the only one that's kind of iffy about it. A lot of people are saying it's bad, and I feel like as the years go on, people are going to stop being blinded by it and realize, hey, we shouldn't have accepted this as just plain dumb fun, because sure, with movies opening back up gradually, that's kind of what Hollywood is aiming for, these kind of go-lucky, fun movies that people just need to sit and turn their minds off for an hour and a half. But I feel like, at the same time, we do also deserve better than that. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but this movie could have done it a little bit more effectively, and honestly better. I guess we just gotta add it to another mediocre and just plain bad video game movie. Shame.